What's up, guys? Today I have another calisthenics conditioning circuit for you, and I'm not sure exactly what you want to call this rep scheme, but basically I was doing a 5 down for a couple movements, and then for a few others that were a little bit easier, I just doubled that. So I started off with the neutral pull-ups, and the rep scheme for that was 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, and then for the more difficult exercises, it was 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I started at 10, went all the way down and back up, and then all the way back down again. I mentioned before in a previous circuit workout video that I think there are two main ways to do down workouts. You can choose an easier exercise like a push-up, for example, and do high reps, and I think, in my experience at least, that this is more demanding on the cardiovascular system. Or you can choose a more difficult exercise like one of these things I'm doing here today called the rocking parallel pseudo planche push-up, which I'll go into later, and you can do lower reps like a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that's going to focus more on the muscles and you're not going to get as winded. I was focusing more on those lower reps recently, but what I'm doing today, this is a good blend of the two, and if you're just starting out, it's a good way to slowly work your way into that higher rep scheme without completely burning yourself out right away. So the first exercise today is pretty self-explanatory. It's the neutral pull-up, and I think that this is the easiest variation for me. That's why I chose it. It's a lot easier for me to do higher reps with these. But if you have a different variation that's easier for you, you can always do that instead. And the second exercise, as you just saw there, is called a rocking parallel pseudo planche push-up. Man, that's a mouthful. And I'm sure you could arrange those words any way you'd like. That's just what I call it. But to break it down, if you don't know already, a planche is basically when you're in a plank position with your feet in the air, which is pretty insane. And then the dynamic version of that is doing push-ups in that position. I think there are very few people in the world that can do that. So if you're working towards a planche, you can do something called a planche lean, which basically means you're going to turn your hands outward a little bit just to take pressure off your wrists and try to bring your hands as close to your waist as possible. And then you lean forward. And that's going to put all the pressure onto the muscles you got to get stronger to eventually do a planche. And the dynamic version of that is doing a push-up. And it is pretty easy to cheat that movement, which is why I was doing the rocking version today. If you're just doing the normal version, it's easy to just not hold yourself accountable and have your hands too far forward. But with the rocking version, what you're doing is at the bottom, you're just leaning far enough forward that your feet come off the ground. And it's just for a little bit. My form isn't that great right now. It's the first time I've done these in over a year. But that's basically what it is. It's just a harder version of the planche push-up. And the third exercise is the wide grip pull-up. Now, you might have noticed that in this workout and all my recent calisthenics conditioning circuits, I'm not doing any horizontal pulling. I'm not doing any rows, and there's a reason for this. I realize that right now I'm heavy enough that I can only do like 15, 16 pull-ups at a time, which means I'm right in that range for maximum hypertrophy, so I don't need to add load to it. I was doing weighted pull-ups in my weight training sessions, but it just isn't necessary right now, so I'm getting all my vertical pulling done in these workouts, which I'm doing at least twice a week. And then on my weight training days, that's where I'll do all my rows. I'm usually doing some kind of weighted row with a barbell, and it's just been working out so far. We'll see if I eventually need to add in more rows on these days. Ring rows would be a perfect addition to this. I'm just trying to stay balanced and make sure I do enough vertical and horizontal pulling. And after that, we moved on to pike push-ups. And this exercise always surprises me. It's always more difficult than I expect. I actually think that a feet elevated version is easier for me. And the main reason for that is flexibility. You have to have a lot of flexibility in your hamstrings and low back to stay in the right position with these. But once you get that down, you can put a lot of tension on your front delts. And this definitely transfers over to overhead pressing with the barbell. So one of the main things you got to watch out for this exercise is you got to hold yourself accountable, just like with the pseudo planche push-ups. It's very easy to let all of your weight transfer onto your feet instead of your hands. And if you do that, you're just defeating the purpose of the whole thing. It's not going to be hard enough, and you could pump out like 100 reps if you did that. So hold yourself accountable with these, and you'll definitely be humbled. And finally, I moved on to the ab wheel rollout. Now, I could have done these with the 10, 8, 6, 4, 2 rep scheme, but I wanted to keep the reps lower just to make sure that every rep was as close to perfect as possible. And when I do these, I think of the body in terms of three main parts: the lats, abs, and the glutes. I'm contracting all three simultaneously, and I'm trying to get all three to work in unison as one main unit. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.